We're close to Arun. Do we have time? Where you at? We have time for a couple of questions? Okay. Yeah. So there's a question all the way to the far left, my left.
Oh, sorry. Is it working? Hello. Thank you very much for all your beautiful presentation. This is, I think, one of the happiest, is it a word? Um, Happiest, wonderful ending to such a marvelous conference, because it comes, for me, it's a very emotional to be here because it's my first time in Minneapolis, first time being in Princetown, so it's a very, very historical moment for me, being a fan since 1988. So I wanted to thank you because me being a Caucasian person, liking or who have adored two different artists, such as Elvis. I discovered Elvis when I was 9 years old, and with all the music that was around me. And 2 years after, my brothers and cousins made me discover Prince with because they were tired of me listening to Elvis. They didn't understand why I was listening to Dead Man. So, because I was born like a month after he died, Elvis. So they made me go through an epic initiation and made me watch the Love Sexy tour a day right before my 11th birthday. So I was really already into gospel music with Elvis and all the African American culture, and I became a real fan of all the music and all the inspiration, blues, jazz, all genres of music, thanks to the music of Elvis. And then I discovered Prince through Love Sexy, which is a big old reference to Big, which is entitled, or quote unquote, gospel album. So that made me go through again through Christianity and made me confirm my own religion, because there is no, I mean, I consider myself a Christian, but I just don't practice. I just don't have time to go to church, but to prove myself that I believe in what I've discovered through music, which is Christianity, I created an association, which is the French part of the Gospel Music Workshop America. Yeah, GMWA in America. So I'm one of the members and representative of the Gospel Music Workshop America in France, Paris. So I'm very proud of being here, and I wanted to thank you all for your all presentation, and mostly thank you to you, that dear lady who proved me again that liking what some people might judge or call profanity music is very truthful, and you have to keep on keeping on believing in what you like and what kind of music you like, and you may come and present such wonderful, epic presentations about what real music is.
Thank you.
I just wanted to thank you about this.
Thank you. Thank you. And then, yeah, and there's a hand all the way back straight. And
which is one of my favorites too, has a reputation as unfortunately, as a contractual obligation album, deserved or undeserved. I wonder if you guys have any thoughts on how that aspect of the record might be incorporated into your readings of it, if there's any room for that, or if that should be something we should maybe exclude from our considerations of this.
So exclude from considerations of what exactly?
Your readings of the record as a record, as a counterpart to
It's commonplace for artists to fulfill contractual obligations. I'm not sure how remarkable that feature of it would be. I'm
Yeah, no, if you want to.
I just wrote down something Elliot said in his talk where he actually mentioned these kinds of ways of thinking about sex work, music, and art. And so I still think it fits specifically because even in these kind of conversations that are not, well, what I'll say is in Black spaces in terms of thinking through sex work and how that's not necessarily disconnected from pleasure, that you can still have these kinds of obligations that are about work and labor and still experience something else in the production of it. So that's what I'll say. I don't know if that answers it, but I don't think they're necessarily separate. I think when we're thinking about what Black artists, Black sex workers do in the kind of confines of that, they produce both pleasure and joy while also like fulfilling those kinds of obligations.
Was there one up here? In the corner? All the way, right there. With the glasses and your hand up.
Hi. I really appreciated the presentations. I have a question that kind of popped up in my mind as I was thinking about gospel, the sacred, the profane, the falsetto. Where would you guys put Marvin Gaye in this conversation?
Oh, cool. There is so much about the Marvin Gaye situation. Yes, and I'm from DC. We're repping the DC area. Marvin Gaye is DC. Wow, so much has been written about Marvin Gaye and how people have derived inspiration from Marvin Gaye in terms of a vocal style and this sort of sonic iconicity of sexual healing through his work. He's also a PK. His father was a preacher. He's a cousin to Donnie Johnson, the guy who did the album The Colored Section, who religiously identifies as a Hebrew Israelite. So there's a lot in the sort of constellation of the Marvin Gaye legacy that could really inform a conversation around sexuality, sexual healing, the religious, and then untethering oneself from that sort of religious sexual conservatism that he and his family were sort of obligated to promote. Does that move toward your question?
Of really the Quiet Storm, although we don't really associate him with falsetto, I see him kind of along those lines of using maybe falsetto-like ranges.
Oh, absolutely falsetto. He's a falsettist.
Okay. In similar ways. So I was just interested to see what you guys thought. Thank you.
Yeah.
We have time for a couple more, right all the way back to my left.
I'm so sorry for putting you to work with this microphone.
Actually, sexual healing. I mean, that's falsetto all up in that. Yeah.
Given that Snoop Dogg is somebody who is both a descendant of P-Funk and Prince and has covered songs like Cool by the Time and Minneapolis Sound Songs, and that he recently just released a gospel album with people like Tone, or B Slade as he's called now,
My
featuring on
muse,
it.
that's my muse right there.
I was wondering how that record, if you've heard it, and how it sits in with the parallels that you've drawn between Prince and gospel music.
So
I was gonna say since you actually
I
know
write
B
about
Slade
him.
and you write about him, you should
My
probably
God.
do that.
So the very first interview that I did with B. Slade, he placed himself in in the lineage of Prince. You seem to know his catalog, his Tone and B.
Yeah, more since he became B Slade than I'm aware of his earlier work, but since he kind of broke away from gospel stuff, I'm more familiar with the stuff he's done since then.
Oh yeah. So B. Slade, for those who are unaware, his government name is Anthony Williams. His former stage name was Tone. Is the first former gospel artist to come out as openly gay in a way that made significant ripples in the gospel music industry. So much so that he was canceled as an artist in many venues. So he took a risk to do so. And he does explicitly situate himself in the musical and iconic legacy of Prince. I was actually talking with Elliot earlier today because as I was listening to the panel of the alumni, and how they were talking about the sort of generative, the highly productive and high-performing nature of Prince, that is the way that collaborators with B. Slade describe him and how he describes himself.
Yeah.
He also is a multi-instrumentalist. He loves to play in the androgynous aspects of his image, always has, even before he came out, even before he disclosed his sexual orientation. So he not only situates himself in that lineage, but also Michael Jackson. Of course, it's a good marketing sort of positioning. Yeah, I have so much I could say about that one. Thank you for asking.
But have you heard the track that he's done with Snoop, and what did you think about
Yes, and I saw the video with the lace front wig. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Check it out.
There's one last one right in the center.
Just something you just said was really interesting about the androgynous piece of things, because I think I'm like a year younger than Prince, and coming up through that time as a Baptist, obviously also very conservative, reaching to that. The embrace of Prince was that we could finally let some of that go. So he was sort of the author of being able to really express yourself. Coming out of, the 60s of like kind of free love, free sex, then kind of the doors sort of slammed shut, and then we had somebody else sort of taking us through. In thinking that and looking at how he did that, because I think his ability to have this acceptance of everyone also is contradicted in the sense of being in real life sort of conservative in terms of his own sexuality. So as you guys were sort of thinking through this panel and the idea of sexual bias almost as it relates to the church, and sort of appealing it along sort of the Barry White version vis-a-vis a falsetto version. What were your thoughts in terms of sort of pulling those pieces out as you think about the album, which is one of my favorite albums, if you think about the album Come, and the juxtaposition of all of that stuff together?
If I understand your question, first I should say, instead of androgynous, gender nonconforming sort of presentation, one of the things that I love about Prince's vocality is his extended vocal range, which is a way of talking about the ability of a baritone to then flip into, which is a vocal designation and not the same as falsetto, which is a vocal style. Countertenors are a vocal designation that can sing in a similar way, but for a prolonged period of time. But what I love about how his vocality challenges what people like me are taught in conservatory is that he does not fit tidily in how people are described with regard to vocal classification. And this is something that you find in any church. There is no soprano, alto, tenor, and bass when you're in church. There's no neat and tidy way of understanding the voice that limits you from traversing these vocal ranges and registers. It also complicates how we understand the gendering of sound, which is what I'm most interested in, that a countertenor may have the sound that resembles a woman, but it's coming out of a man who is a football player. Who do we presume can make what sorts of sounds is what I'm really interested in. And how does that then reveal something about our bias when they don't produce the sound we anticipate and we are unable to hear them? They are inaudible because they don't produce the sound we anticipate.
Yeah. All right, if we could thank our panelists, everyone, thank you.